All righty. So, Lars, you have just finished. We're picking up basically right where we left off. So you basically just left the room and are walking out of it into the larger city. For about a month and a half, you've been yanked around the frontier, serving as a blunt instrument of the Empire. And yet, as your rapid pace carries you out of the Department of Faith with Gore at your side, you can't help but be excited. Drinks, bar fights, debtors, beautiful women, and prostitutes await you. You're in fact so wrapped up in your thoughts of celebration near the docks that only Gore's change in posture tips you off that you've been walking towards a person somewhat absent-mindedly. Unlike most of the people in the Imperial complex, this man isn't wearing a bureaucrat's doublet or an Imperial Guard's cloak. He's a master servant, the type of which suffocated every aspect of your life in your youth. The man doesn't bear the Cairo of the Empire, but instead the golden lily, the personal seal of your father. The master servant's eyes are locked onto you, and he holds a sealed scroll in his hand.
He'll just take it and see if he says anything.
The master servant somewhat wordlessly hands it off to you. He stands in position, not moving. He's waiting for something.
Yeah, I'll open it up then.
All right, you crack the seal and can give the letter a read. Boy, your forced service seems to have made something of you. Colleagues of mine in the Department of Faith speak greatly of your skill in battle. Perhaps those years you wasted whoring, fighting, and battering the poor have made you a valuable asset to your family. I'm willing to extend an olive branch one last time. Your cousin begged me to do so. It was pathetic. Your sister, too, wishes for her older brother to at least be there for her wedding. I know what you really are. No one else understands, but I do. Take a few days and think about this offer. Consider it very carefully. I'm giving the opportunity to become whatever you want. A judge, quaestor, hell, a general. I have the ear of the Emperor. If you decide no, then don't bother showing your face. You can consider yourself disinherited. This is the response I expect. But if you truly have decided to make something of yourself, come to our family home outside of Mythos. I'm staying here alongside your mother, sister, and even your brother. He's been granted leave from his legion for the winter. It's just signed, your father.
I take it you're going to want a response then? I'll ask the master servant.
The master servant says, I was only here to make sure that the letter was delivered. He was told that the letter would speak for itself. He nods.
All right.
And seeing that you've read it, he will begin a clipped walk back down the corridor away. So, what are you going to do? Are you going to go speak to him immediately, or are you going to spend some time celebrating?
Hold on, I'm reading it over one more time.
Okay.
Miss anything.
Sounds good.
How far away is my family home from here?
It's like on foot, probably a 45-minute walk there and back.
Okay. I'm probably gonna go to like a bathhouse or something first and try to wash up a little bit,
Okay.
and then head over there.
Yeah, you head to your horse, which was taken by its reins by a servant outside of the Department of Faith complex. You get back on horseback and begin to ride out from the Imperial complex. As you exit the complex out into the busy streets of the city, you, lacking your judge's badge, since that you no longer are a judge, you find movement to be a slow and tedious affair through the city. You holler, trying to get people to move, and Gore growls, but cart traffic gives way to no man unless he has a badge. So, as you slouch forward on your horse, leaning down heavily to scratch Gore's ears, you watch him perk up, and you see that in this sort of traffic jam of sorts, there's a man at the edge of the road. He seems to be waving at you, and he's vaguely familiar, but you can't recognize what his face. You recognize his face, but you can't connect a name to that face. And he's waving at you.
Right over towards him as soon as I can.
You ride off from the main road over towards him, and he says, "Hey, I know you."
I take that means not a good thing then.
No, actually, you made me quite a good amount of money in the fighting bits. Well, I always bet on you.
Ah,
But you've been gone for so long, I thought you'd, stopped fighting entirely, maybe even died. If you're here in the city again, I have to get you a drink. You paid me a small fortune.
perhaps another time. Will you be free another time this week? I'm in the middle of
No,
going
no,
somewhere at
trust
the
me,
moment.
I insist, whatever you're doing can't be that important, and I don't know how much longer I'll be in
He'll cut him
town.
off. It is important. I'm afraid I can't stay.
All right then. Well, if you change your mind, I'm going to be down at the Rusted Screw on the docks. I remember you used to go there after your fights, and obviously you don't know me that well, but I really appreciate what you did for my coin purse.
He'll just nod.
He gives you a nod, and you said you're headed to the bathhouse. And
Yeah, I want to clean up a little bit before meeting my family again.
okay, you make your way to the bathhouse. It's a pretty busy place, especially since you're going to be using one of those massive public ones. You're going to have to find one slightly upscale to find stable, but you can easily do that. It costs a few coppers to have someone take care of your horse, and Gore will certainly not be allowed in, so it'll take a few coppers to convince the what do they call those, furriers who takes care of horses. It'll take a few coppers to convince them to get a dog bowl for Gore and get some water, but all this can be taken care of with just a pittance amount of money. And you can go into the bathhouse, start to clean up. As you work your way through the many layers of caked dirt from 5 weeks of time in the frontier, and try to scrub down just all the filth that's begun to accumulate. You do know that no matter how clean you are, just your clothing and your tattoos and your scars and the lack of an eye, that already is going to violate many rules of decorum expected by your family.
Do I know of a place that I might be able to go and get at least something a little bit more formal?
Yeah, you could probably head to. You could certainly get fine clothes. That'd be easy enough. Some loose-fitting robes that seem to be in fashion these days.
Yep. I'll take out the earrings and try to make myself as presentable as possible.
Yeah. After a brief stint in the bathhouse, you begin to exit it. You head back out to your horse. You're feeling clean. Maybe, not fancy, but certainly clean for the first time in 5 weeks. You get back on your horse, begin to once again ply through the dense traffic of the city. And as you make your way to get some nice clothes, you feel yourself getting nervous. Mostly at the thought of seeing your father, though also at the thought of seeing the rest of your family. It's been a very long time since you met them, in a formal setting like that. Essentially since you left home, which at this point, almost 16 years ago. So, quite a while and quite some time. There's been some letters, and at some points you've sent letters back home, and sometimes they've sent you many letters over the years, but there's something like this.
Gotcha.
But you can make your way to a shop selling fine clothes. They seem to change, with almost every year what is in fashion at any given moment. And at this current moment, sort of loose-fitting silk, almost robe-like clothing is what's in fashion. And you can see people that look as wealthy as they are occupying the shop, getting things fitted for themselves, men and women. A shopkeeper who looks to be a half-elf with pin-pointed ears.
Do I know a family color that they usually wear? Or does not matter?
Purple with gold outline, gold rim, is the traditional thing for someone of your father's rank, but that's
But it's super expensive, yeah.
So you could go for something more modest, like green with gold trim, or literally any other color with gold trim is easily affordable.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do a dark forest kind of green.
Okay. Yeah, that'll cost you about 8 gold. And luckily, at this point, they're not really making something unique for you. They're just sizing, and they can do some tailoring on the fly. The half elf will sort of hang clothes up to your form and figure out what he thinks looks best. And since you probably don't have any strong fashion opinions, I think he'll most likely just concede to whatever he says will look good on you.
Yeah.
And what you end up with is something that's tight fitting around the chest and sort of the arms, but mostly loose flowing silk and cloth everywhere else.
Gotcha. I think a definitely big part of him wanting to be more presentable is, especially after 2 times being in the dead ward, you kind of realize, like, I could literally die at any time. I
Yeah.
should probably remend some things in my past first.
Yeah, with the new fine clothes and like looking at yourself in the mirror, it is a strange combination. The tattoos and the missing eye, but then the incredibly expensive, fancy clothes. It's a bit of a mixed message.
Yeah.
Do you
Wasn't
want to
much I
get
can do about
something?
tattoos, and I have a nice leather eye patch. So that's the best I can
Yeah,
do.
yeah. I mean, it's a decently well made leather type. Well, is there any? Are you just gonna dive into it to go out to meet your family? Your father did say there that you could wait several days.
No, I think I want to go up sooner because several days means leading up to the wedding. I'd rather meet with him first instead of just showing up at the last second.
Okay. You get on horseback. The gore follows you out of the city. It takes a while. What would have been a 45-minute walk on foot, on horseback, takes you probably the same length of time just to get out of the city. Waiting for carts, navigating your way around. There's not really like traffic laws, but there is the simple fact that big cart will crush your horse's legs if you try to get in its way, so in many cases you just have to concede to them, waiting for them to go in front of you. It's at sort of a critical interchange where to your right you see a road leading out towards docks, and to the left one that exits the city. The docks, that place of safety and comfort, the exit going out towards your family estate. And once you take that sort of left hand going to the city exit, you feel that anticipation begin to build. Your heart begins to thump a little bit more rapidly. It doesn't thump in the face of almost certain death, but in this particular instant it begins to thump a little
Inside.
bit. Yeah. And as you exit the city itself, it only begins to grow worse. Gore seems to pick up on it a little bit. He rides closer to your horse than usual, not sprinting ahead and then running back as he usually does. And I suppose that does bring up a bit of a question. Obviously, Gore is not a very... he's not what a nobleman would be expected to have with him. I mean, he is a hunting dog, but he's a bit more than that. I mean, he is a vicious war dog at this point. And your etiquette and accent aren't quite noble in bearing.
With my estate, is there a place that I could leave him at, like a nearby stables, or just command him to stay?
Yeah. The estate that you are headed to is huge. So if you want, there's plenty of places to keep him when you're headed in to speak to your family.
Gotcha. That's what I'll probably do then. Keep him some food wherever I keep him.
All right. So you begin to ride towards the countryside, and you have a bit to think. You probably have 15 minutes before you arrive. And you think that for the first 10 or so years of your life, you didn't understand the meaning of finite. It was because of the sheer unbelievable wealth that your family had. There's always another tutor, another servant, another treat, another sword. There is never fear of permanent loss or deprivation. And that excess is shown in even this satellite estate of your family. Amidst green rolling hills of other senatorial states, vast plantations, is a horse corral. The horse corral is so large that it could swallow some of the other states dotting the countryside around it, and it was in that corral that you learned to ride bareback and with saddle. After you see that horse corral, you don't even really need to look, but because you know what the rest of this estate looks like by the back of your hand. Whenever your father was needed in the capital, you and your family would pack up and move to this estate. You spent many summers here in your youth. Beyond the corral is an orchard, a field of cultivated fire moss, the beginnings of gardens. The gardens were one of your mom's pet projects. She had little interest in raising children, but took great interest in 3 things. The gardens were one of them, the arboretum another, and her political projects, the last one. And
what's the arboretum?
The arboretum is like a tree. It's like an orchard, but it doesn't produce fruit. It's just meant for trees.
So did most of the time we were raised more like by servants?
Yeah, certainly. Like, she probably never taught you a thing in your life.
Gotcha.
The gardens were one of those, deep personal projects, and so they are tended to by the finest of landscapers. And at least in your youth, a druid had been personally hired to maintain the garden, which is, just an absurd level of excess. Thousands of gold a year spent for one man to
Right.
maintain a garden, slightly better than the competition. And then there is the estate itself: 4 servant buildings, 2 stables, a guard barracks, and a 72-room mansion. As that complex of buildings comes into sight, you see that it's a bit smaller than it was in your youth, but more considerably golden than you remember. Dozens of statues decorate the rotunda leading to the main entrance, and you see servants, many of them, dozens probably, though they don't seem to be particularly waiting for you, just going about their routine. A master servant stands on the porch to the house, the same one that you recognize giving you the letter back in the estate. Again, you know that he is not there just for you. This is just a part of his charge to sit on the front porch, whether it's rain or shine.
Well, I'll drop Gora and the horse off at the stable, give Gora some food to make sure he stays there and keeps guard of the horse, and then walk up to the estate.
As you walk up the steps, the servant gives you a deep bow. Welcome, Lord Lars. Your father and kin are at the rear pavilion, if you'd like to speak with them now.
If they'd allow me.
Yes. And he will part open the large doors that are made of bronze, but meant to sort of look decorative, though they are certainly still very thick metal doors.
Is this like a master servant that's like been in our families forever before I know him, or
this one you actually don't recognize? Your family did have a master servant for most of your youth, but your father was very quick to get rid of anyone, even if they hadn't done anything wrong, if he just suspected them of having done something.
Oh, okay.
You follow this master servant at a clipped pace. You pass through redecorated rooms that bear structural familiarity, but their interior has been totally changed up. You can tell that you are headed towards the back lawn. Your father always spent time in the pavilion back there. As the master servant opens the glass door, you can see out towards the backyard, and sure enough, there's your family. They're still far away, but you weren't sure what you expected them to look like. Certainly not the same, but still. You see your sister, your eye resting on her. The last time you'd seen her, she was only 14. She was still, basically a young girl. She's grown significantly taller and truly embraced imperial fashion. Her face is hidden behind layers and layers of makeup. Her natural figure is weighed down by dresses and skirts and corsets, all just layered on top of one another. And she's begun to look quite a bit like your mother, with this sort of pursed lip expression. And whatever happiness and kindness had been fostered in your youth has been utterly smothered out. Beside your sister, you can't quite get a good look from this distance. You're still quite far off, but you can tell he's in an officer's uniform, which is, somewhat strange to wear a dress uniform in this informal gathering, but he's probably newly promoted, trying to flex it a little bit. Then you can see the back of a woman seated beside your sister. You don't need to really linger your eyes on her much longer. You can see the gray hairs. It's most likely your mother, though. She is just looking out towards the gardens. Then your eye briefly hangs on an old man, but you look away from him, a little bit of fear rising in your chest, and you see your brother, Agrippa. He's grown a thick, bushy beard. Last time you'd seen him, he was a youth, just like your sister. His beard is well trimmed, as per legionary standard. His soft, youthful features have been hardened into these sharp lines. And there's something to that expression. It doesn't quite have the same condescension as your father, but it's definitely starting to get there. And then finally...
I'm the eldest.
Yeah, you are the eldest.
Gotcha.
And then you've started to sort of make your way across the lawn now, following the master's servant. And finally, you look at the one that you even struggle to look at now. Your father's old. That once indomitable figure of strength has been reduced to weak old man. His features are contorted into a scowl that is practically fixed on his face. His clothes are the most luxurious of fineries, all dyed purple, solid, or occasionally with strings of gold. A sword rests at the side of his chair that you can't imagine the last time he used it. And yet, your desire for And despite this sort of deep desire that he would have grown ugly or, sort of just look, most people, some can age quite poorly. He just hasn't. His silver hair seems to suit him. And he remains seated in his chair. As you approach, you see different reactions on the faces of your family. Your sister seems delighted, but trying to maintain her reaction. She sort of smiles a bit softly. Your brother doesn't even look at you. Your mother remains staring at the gardens. Your father's eyes just lock onto yours, though, as you approach the pavilion.
I don't say anything as I get closer or stand up or nothing like that.
Yeah. The master servant stops at the bottom of 3 steps, which lead up into the pavilion proper. Your sister's husband, presumably, or soon-to-be husband, he's the only one that goes out to actually approach you, and he's sort of at the top of the steps and says, "Well, introductions are in order. It's a pleasure to meet you."
And a pleasure to you. Name's Lars.
Yes, I've heard much about you from Vespania. I'm Optimer Servius Marmicus Ignia Captiosin, Centurion in the 7th.
Nice to meet you.
He gives you a broad smile, which, no one else in your family is smiling. You don't really know how he got involved with all this. He's so different to the rest of them. And he makes his way back to your sister. Your brother and your mother are now, have stood up, and now they're just sort of sitting at the balcony on the far side of the pavilion, essentially doing their best to ignore that you're even here. Your father, though,
Well,
he sort of speaks up as you approach. "Well, seems as if you didn't need long to think."
no, I made up my mind by the time I got that letter.
Did you know?
Had some wise words spoken to me from my cousin.
Really?
Yes.
That sniveling glory hound actually managed to improve you? If I'd known that telling you to go seek out familial connection would have brought you back after all these years, I could have just hammered that into your head just years ago.
Well, that and the many brushes with death make it a lot more convincing.
I don't know what I expected. So, what position is it that you've come here to beg for?
Nothing. I simply wanted to be here to meet you all again. Spend some time.
You see your sister's expression soften, even as etiquette of keeping a somber expression. She smiles at you, and you can see sort of tears forming in her eyes. Your father looks at you, and he clearly doesn't believe you. He has a raised eyebrow. His whole face is contorted in confusion. He says, "Yes, I'm sure you have a deep care for your lost family after all these years, but which one is it? A judge? Would you like an estate? Retainers?"
If it's something you want to keep prying into, then we can discuss at a later time.
His brows furrow, and he actually seems angry. He stands up from his chair. Everyone else is sort of seated themselves. Your brother and mother are still not even looking. And he walks over and says, "Really? Who exactly do you think you are, coming in here out of nowhere, thinking that you're coming back into this family? You're a tool. You're a tool to gain us more influence. You think this was not an invitation to rejoin our lives. You made that decision when you left."
I'm making that decision to come back. Whether or not you'll accept me is up to you, but I'm here for the time being.
The arrogance. Gods, look at you. Tattoos. Jesus. If your father, your grandfather, if he saw this, God, he'd ask me to latch you until the skin was bleeding and the tattoos were gone. Everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. He looks away, back towards the porch where your mother is, and says, "Come, Latoria. Should at least see your boy." And your mother glances over. You can see that she's aged a bit more poorly than your father. The constant pursed expression she holds has made all these wrinkles sort of form all around her mouth. And your brother sort of glances over as well. Your brother's face looks scarily similar to your father, contorted in like this anchored expression. Your mother just looks somewhat mindless, just sort of glancing in your direction. And she sort of walks over and gives from a distance, pretty far away. She just gives like a bow, like this is an acquaintance of hers. And she says, "Hello."
Hello, Mother. Hope you're doing well.
She says, "Yes, yes, the gardens are doing quite well this year. The Arboretum has several more trees. I think we may even win a horticultural competition in Regia."
Good to hear.
Your father just sort of waves her off, and your brother doesn't seem to have much to say, and your father begins to walk down the steps of the pavilion, gesturing for you to follow.
I'll kind of look back at my sister to see what her expression is and then follow if she...
Yeah, she looks very, very happy.
I just kind of nod towards her and then walk towards
She smiles
father.
and waves at you. And as you descend the steps with your father, he says, "So what's the plan here? You're going to just come out of the blue and act like you didn't just abandon all of us?"
Won't make excuses for what I've done. But I'm not here looking for anything special.
Everyone else up there is serving the family. Agrippa fights in the legions for us. Vesponia gets us an alliance with Clan Ignian. What of you? What is your great contribution going to be?
Depends on what if you count what I've already done.
What you've already done. You killed one necromancer.
Yes.
He looks toward you. And again, you have moved on quite a bit from being a child, so you don't quite feel, scolded, but that expression does still probably engender just anger as he just looks at you with this condescending look, like, anyone could kill a necromancer, it's not that impressive. And you guys are walking sort of along the back edge of the house now, and he says, "Well, if you truly believe this is possible, we can find a room for you. You can spend at least the weekend here. Agrippa doesn't have much longer before he needs to go back to the front, probably a week or two. His legions will need him. The bastards out on the plains, son of the dragon, he's an unpredictable fellow, rather like yourself."
What was my sister's name again?
Vespania.
You cut out. What'd you say?
Vespania?
When is Vespania's wedding?
Frost 23rd, so about 6 weeks away. We'll have all the top brass from Clan Ignia there. He seems to be looking at you. He seems confused. Like this is not quite how we expected this conversation to go.
There's been a lot that's gone on while I've been gone, and I'm still thinking over what things I want to do myself. But if there's anything that you have suggested-wise for being able to help the family, I'm open to hear it.
He sort of waves it off. The master servant will put you up in a room. You can remain here at least for the weekend. We'll figure something out. And he just sort of dismisses you with a wave and continues his sort of walk around the estate. Most of your family is dispersed. Only your sister and her soon-to-be husband are remaining in the pavilion. Your brother and mother are walking out into the gardens.
I'll go back to the pavilion then.
Yeah. As you approach, your sister sort of says something to her husband. You're not sure what to the effect of it. She sort of whispers it, but he walks off in the opposite direction away from like where you're approaching, and she sort of gets up and rapidly descends the steps and gives you a big old hug.
He'll hug back pretty tightly.
I didn't think you would come.
I wasn't quite so sure of myself until pretty recently either.
Well, that's incredible. I know it's somewhat girlish, but I'd always imagined that you'd be there at my wedding.
I'm planning on it.
It's
If you'll allow me to.
of course, I'd be more than happy to. I feel terrible about how things have been, and I don't know. I wanted everything to be better, and it seems like it is. I mean, father was father, and girl holds a bit of a grudge, but that can all be overcome with time.
I'm not here to fully make amends, but I agree. Things being better would be nice.
Well,
I don't hold anything against you or anyone else in the family.
good to hear. That's very good to hear. We should celebrate.
Oh, what do you have in mind?
Um, well, father is in a bit of a phase at the moment. He's trying to secure an alliance with Clan Ignia, so the home is a bit dry. Um, she thinks for a few moments. Well, I suppose we don't need drinks to lubricate a conversation. We can just talk. It's been so long.
I'd be happy to. Just sit around and chat for a bit.
Yeah, and she will just sort of grab your arm and move up the steps of the pavilion and sit down. And it has been a long time. A lot of shit's happened. It's quite literally going to be impossible to quite fully catch up. But she will talk for as long as you're willing to. She will talk about, growing up in the estate. She'll talk about countless, courtships that had begun and then failed, and then luckily the intersection of politics and romance happened to meet pretty squarely. She's met a man who is both very politically connected in the capital and whom she also likes quite a decent amount, and is quite satisfied with where things are at the moment. She talks about your mother's pet projects, your father's political ambitions, his promotion to proconsul to full consul of the empire, placing him in an exclusive club of about 50 people amongst the upper leadership of the empire. And she will just talk and talk and talk. And what do you tell her of your time? Obviously, it's not just your time in the frontier, but also the 16 years preceding that made you who you are.
Yeah, I think the 16 years I'm gonna gloss over more, just saying, I didn't really do much good things for myself. Just fucked around, drank a lot, until I had, what can only be called a, intervention, I guess, with the royal guard that happened, and then me getting conscripted as a judge.
Yeah, she'll sort of she'll first ask about the incident with the judge and she's heard quite a bit of stories about what happened down in the frontier. Your father has been getting almost like daily intelligent reports from someone, and your father would be in his office back at the main family estate grumbling to himself, and when your sister inquired, it'd always be, well, he did something again, and just, just every expectation sort of being a little bit superseded. But
I'm glad to see you haven't changed all that much from when I remember you.
yeah, she seems very enthusiastic. Her initial sort of what she initially looked like seems to just be her court persona, which why she would do that is beyond you, because it makes her just look very dour and almost old. And you guys can talk for probably a couple more hours, maybe an hour or two, before it's not particularly late in the day. It's just that servants have begun to move around, and you can see that clearly preparations for dinner are beginning as the beehive of the whole estate begins to activate. And she says, well, I don't know if we want to quite rush into full integration right now. If you were at the dinner table, I'm not sure if Agrippa and father could handle themselves.
I'll probably wait a night or two.
All right.
Give them some time.
She just gives you a hug and then descends the steps, making her way back towards the estate proper. So
I'll probably go try to look for the master servant to find where I'm going to be staying.
Yeah. You go and find the master servant. It's easy enough. There are actually several on the property, but they will refer you until you find yourselves in front of master servant Vlasov, who seems to be the head honcho of this estate. When you find him, he is inside of a corridor directing, almost like an orchestra conductor, just sending through different dishes to the dining room, making sure cleaners are headed to the rooms, that the rooms will be entirely taken care of, the lounges will be prepared afterward, and You can approach him as he's conducting, the dozens of servants, and he'll,
I'll probably kind of just wait off to the side for him to be done and notice me.
yeah, he will finish. If once he notices you, he will quickly take a pause and walk over, give you a deep bow. Lord Lars.
Hello. I was told to meet with you for rooming accommodations.
Ah, interesting. The Lord Regia seemed to imply that you would be staying in the city for the next 2 days. I had not prepared a room for you.
Well, if it's something that can't be prepared, I can
No,
always
it
do
certainly
that.
can. It certainly can. I'd like to just clarify with the Lord of the House.
Sure.
He gives a deep bow again and then heads into the dining room. You can hear the sound of talking exiting from within, of people
That is what
beginning
my
to...
father said, right? You can stay over the weekend.
That is what your father said.
Okay.
Master servant steps in through the doorway and emerges maybe a minute later. You can just tell by his expression as he's approaching that it's going to be something negative. He says, yes, the Lord is quite adamant that while you can visit during the day, you are to remain in the city for your evening accommodations.
Gotcha.
I apologize for any inconvenience. I can fetch
Not
you a
at all.
carriage from out front to bring you back to the city if you'd like.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
He nods. And he will, by the time you're out front, maybe 5-10 minutes later, Gore has been cleaned, which for him too is his first bath in 5 weeks. No more fleas at his body. He's just a clean, not poofy because he's still a Doberman, but he at least has the layer of grime and dirt and matted fur mostly gone. He probably did not enjoy that particular experience. And your horse has, alongside another one, has been hooked up to a two-person carriage. One of the many servants from the estate has taken to the reins, and he will give you a deep nod as you approach.
If he doesn't stop me, I'll just get in the carriage.
Yeah, yeah. You get into the carriage and begin a hard ride back to the city. You tumble across country roads and then soon onto the great cobblestone road leading to the capital itself, wheels clattering across the stones. And once again, you have sort of a moment to catch your breath and think. How does Lars think that went? Obviously, it's not done quite yet, but for an initial meeting.
He's not really sure how it's gonna go. He's hoping that he can show his dad a different side of him, where he's at least somewhat convinced. But it's gonna be an uphill battle, and he probably feels like either his brother acts the way he does because he's just becoming like his father, or possibly because he resents him, because I'm sure Lars leaving meant all the stuff from his father and mother went on to them.
Yeah, most likely. Well, you can get back to the city soon enough. The carriage driver will ask where to drop you off.
Do I know a place to stay? Because if not,
Well,
then I can just ask for like.
yes,
a
you
local
do. When you last time you spent considerable amounts of time in the great imperial capital, it was mostly spent down at the docks, fighting, drinking, pouring, and so you know plenty of places to stay down there. Some of it will even put you up for free.
I want to try to distance myself from that, so I'm going to ask if he has a place or something like that to stay at.
Yeah, certainly. If you ask the servant, he will bring you towards a high-class establishment within the administrative quarter of the city. It's within sight of the Imperial complex. Your coin purse begins to preemptively ache just looking at how beautiful the building is. There's trellised vines reaching down from the upper level. It's just you know this is going to be expensive. And the servant will let you out. He will say, I will put up your horse with the local stable here, your dog as well. And is there a particular time you'd like me to return in the morning?
Just clear it with the master servant, I guess, before you do.
Yes,
or
of
at least
course.
the time available.
He will give a nod and ride the cart around the back of the inn. From within, you can hear, within the edifice of this hotel, you can hear sort of muffled talking. You would know that hotels of this type, while they sometimes have very small bar areas, they are not the taverns of the dock district. They are essentially just for sleeping and sometimes eating. Some of them have very fancy restaurants, but they're not like the raucous places with bars and drinking and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
But you can head inside. Within the immediate interior, there's an attendant sort of sitting behind a little wooden podium. He gives you a nod as you enter. You can see him sort of look along your robes for some sort of like insignia or marker, or, signet ring or anything like that. But when it yields nothing, he says, "Hello, Lord. Are you staying here for tonight?"
Yes. How much will that be?
It's going to be 2 gold for tonight.
You'll have 2 gold.
All right, you hand over the 2 gold pieces. He'll bring you up towards a room. He'll tell you about the many amenities of the place. The private bathhouse, the gymnasium built in, the all sorts of stuff. The fancy restaurant downstairs that is open well until after most respectable places would close, and the bar.
Is the restaurant included, or is that going to be
all of it's included?
Okay.
So you didn't quite get the celebration with your family that you're hoping for. Do you have a little personal celebration?
Probably not. He's probably just gonna kind of go back to his room and just think things over on the things he wants to say or do the following weeks, or the following days, I mean.
Yeah. You have a sort of private time in your room alone. You take a few shaky breaths and try to drift off to sleep. Sleep eludes you. Every time you try to fall asleep, you sort of think about what's going to come tomorrow or the day after, and you feel yourself sort of wired with energy. In the past, this energy would be dissipated via a fight or just, at least a verbal sparring match with some drunkard down at the docks. But without that outlet to burn through this energy, you're just laying in your bed after trying to have fallen asleep for like an hour or two, just with this nervous ball.
Gotcha.
Are you just going to continue to try to force yourself to sleep?
Yeah, Lars knows he can deal with it, but he's trying to distance himself from that while he's here.
Okay. You roll over and hang your arm off the bed and scratch Gore's ears and just continue to try to fall asleep. You don't know when you do, but eventually you wake up in the morning. You are groggy as shit. It's just before sunrise. What awakes you is the sound of a knocking at the door, and you can hear a sort of muffled voice from the other side. Lord, we are serving breakfast down in the dining chamber. And then you can hear the sound of footsteps moving away. Presumably they're doing this to all of the people staying with them.
Lars is actually going to put on his, he'll put on his signet ring.
Okay, you pull on the signet ring of your family's clan. Unlike the noble houses of other regions of the world, they're not like heraldic houses, but this is the personal seal of your father. Essentially, signet rings are functionally marks of property. You are, a part of your father's immediate family. So you pull on the signet ring. It's an image of a golden lily. You can roll out of bed. Do at least a little bit of a morning routine. You remember the extensive routines you do back in your youth to look presentable. Basically an hour alongside servants. But that is not quite what we're doing here today. Just a bit of beard trimming, a bit of trimming of the mustache, a bit of refining of the hair. Nothing too much. Then pulling on your fine clothes, giving Gore a scratch. And are you headed out to look for the carriage back to the estate? You're going to have breakfast here?
Breakfast here, probably.
You head down. There seems to be only about 4 people here. One of them is clearly like an off-duty military man. He's not in a military uniform, but it's almost like it's very easy to tell. There is 2 other people here, probably merchants, and each one is sort of isolated in their own corner, and you two can get a little table to yourself in quiet, begin to eat. It's a little bit lonely. Again, the dock district, for all of its fault, does have some nice parts, which is you're always surrounded by interesting people, but this is just a quiet, 30-minute breakfast with no real incidents of anything. So,
after eating, then I'll go and wait for the carriage, basically.
Yeah. You head outside. Hasn't come yet, so you go in and ask for, the fanciest version of a stick they have, which ends up being a sort of rope cord. And you play with Gore. And after about 30 minutes, the carriage rattles down the street. You can see the large golden lily on the edge of one of the doors, and it rides up in front of the hotel. Servant sort of tips his hat to you.
He'll just get in.
All right. The two of you guys begin to rattle away back out of the city. It takes a while, but eventually the various familiar features of your family's estate come into view. You rattle around the rotunda, the carriage pulls to a stop, and the master servant is waiting on the lowest step.
I think before he goes inside as well, he'll probably take off his signet ring because he doesn't know how his father will react if he sees him wearing it.
Yeah. The master servant will give a deep nod as you approach and says, "Good morning, Lord. Your
Morning.
The master of the house has elected not to see you today. However, your sister has requested that you be brought to her."
Thank you. I'm ready immediately then.
He nods and will take you through the winding corridors of the house. There's so many rooms in this building that basically change their purpose at will. So there's not such a thing as really a bedroom. I mean, temporary sleeping quarters, realistically, because rooms are just moved around at the whimsy of your father. But you go into what is the temporary bedchamber of your sister. She's sitting near the wall, seems to be painting something on canvas, though you can't see exactly what it is from your perspective. Her husband is laying down on the bed, just his eyes closed, trying to catch some sleep as the servant has knocked on the door and then allowed you in. And your sister looks over from her painting and stands up and walks over and says, "Oh, Lars, I assume you got some good sleep."
As good as I could.
She looks over towards her husband with the sort of, just stares at him, and he stands up and says, "Oh, pleasure to see you again," and then he exits the room. And she says, he's not a very social person. He's a sweetie, though, I assure you.
Yeah, I just assumed there was parts of things that we're going to talk about that you didn't want him to hear, but if that's not the case, then...
Not particularly. I just, Father is a bit, perturbed. I don't think he'll see you for quite some time. Luckily, we have plenty of time for the wedding for him to change his mind on that, but I don't know what it is that you said to him, but you seem to have rattled him quite a bit. Obviously, he doesn't show that, but it's rather obvious in the way he behaves.
Well, seems like he expected something different of me coming here.
Well, I, for one, am not going to allow that to keep us from catching up. And obviously, I can't speak to you all day, but for what time I can, I'd like to. I would recommend after today you just keep to yourself until Father sends to you again. I'm not sure what he expected, but clearly you're not that mad.
For once, happy to be a disappointment for what he expected.
And she'll bring you over to the canvas and talk about what she's painting. She's not the best painter. She does it, like, she's done it for a very long time, but that doesn't make her incredibly good. She probably never will be good. It's just something to entertain herself.
That's the time.
Yeah, and she'll talk about, she's a lot to talk about. I mean, she's worried about her husband dying off on the front, about Agrippa dying off on the front, about all the horrible shit happening in the East. She's worried about all these rumors of treason in the South. I mean, even and beyond politics, she has all these social clubs that she's in. You know, she has friends all across the empire, and she just has. She'll just hit you with essentially a deluge of information. Yesterday was sort of both of you guys catching up, but if you allow her to, Vespania will essentially dump years and years worth of dramas and concerns and nervousness and fear on you.
Yeah. I mean, he'll just listen like he's paying attention.
Yeah.
He's just following what she's saying. He will add at some point, though, so, seems that, like I said, you haven't changed much, but, what happened to Agrippa?
He didn't take it well when you left. He just, he felt like you'd abandoned us, and that you were ashamed of your family.
Unfortunately, did abandon both of you.
She nods.
And now he busies himself with trying to follow in the footsteps of father, rise through the political ranks, all that. He's already the rank of quaestor.
Do you think he'd meet with me, or is it too soon?
I think him and mother will do whatever father says.
I wanted to apologize to you specifically. I know things probably weren't easy after I left. They shouldn't have gotten to that point.
I have regrets for when we were younger as well. I don't all lay it at the foot of you.
You say so. Thank you, then.
And you can spend probably another hour or two with her, about 4 hours in total. And eventually, her husband will return, and she'll be told that it's time for some games out in the rear lawn. They're going to play polo, and she will have to excuse herself. And after that, a servant will escort you from the premises, not in like a forceful way, just like, hey, there is no one else that wishes to speak with you here.
Yeah.
You'll be led out to a carriage, and it's all done under the air of civility, of course. I mean, such is this subculture. But this is like basically telling you to fuck off. We don't want you here. We'll come back. Like we'll find you when we want you. Basically, it's all done under the guise of like respectful servants, and the individual servants have no animosity. But you've definitely pissed off your father. And you can be placed in a carriage, trundle back to the city, and you don't know when he'll call for you. What are you going to do in the meantime?
He'll probably try to hold out for at least a day and see if he calls for him. If he doesn't, he'll unfortunately probably fall back into going down to the district and meeting up with some old people.
Yeah, you spend a whole day in a hotel. You do practically nothing. For all the things that the wait staff talk about, like the sanatorium and the gymnasium and all this stuff, it's just not interesting. It's like you went from the absolute, apex of life, fighting for your life every single day, defeating foes of the Empire, enemies so powerful that they slaughter most normal men, and then you're just like, oh, I move weight now. Like it doesn't, crack that itch. But you resist on the small chance that your father calls for you. He does not. Then you wait the following day. He does not. And boredom. It's not really the allure of the dock district. It's just not having anything to do that begins to start to get to you. I mean, Gore is a wonderful dog, but it's not like he can engage you in philosophical conversation. He only needs to be walked a couple times a day. So you rapidly begin to run out of stuff to do.
I'll think I have Lonnet's offer and probably meet with him and see if there's anything interesting. Because I'm assuming this is probably like mid to late in the day.
Yeah, it's probably later in the day, on the 3 or 4 days after you originally met with your father. And you exit the hotel and make your way to the dock district. I assume you're not wearing your fine clothes and you just dress up as you usually do. Leather armor, sort of dirty common clothes.
Yeah, I'll keep my fine clothes hung up and ready at the hotel.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's getting late in the winter. The winter storms have begun to roll through the city, which are not snowstorms, because this is too close to the equator. It is these tropical storms almost, with great thunder and rain dumping onto the great city of Mythos. And in this environment, you make your way down towards the docks. And realistically, every dock district in the Empire is basically the same, and you are more qualified than most to say that because you've directly experienced almost all of them. The visible parts of the docks, the part where travelers see, are rigidly maintained by authorities. Beggars are beaten for being there. Criminals are hung if they ply their trade there, and law is powerfully enforced. However, just one block from that sort of outer serene of this sort of outer beauty and outer shell of civility, the dock district begins. The level of crime varies based on the city, but here in the capital, it's a very limited thing. Gambling dens, bars, the occasional firemouse den, nothing too crazy. Frankly, half the things are even legal. There's nothing illegal about them. It is a deeply nostalgic experience. The smells, the sights, the taste of the air. The only question is where to start. There is two places which you used to frequent practically daily, the Rusted Screw and the Broken Ring. The Rusted Screw is home to that man who gave you the offer. It used to be the home to an underground boxing ring, the one where you killed a man for the first time. It wasn't intentional, of course. You just were fighting in bare-knuckle boxing, and when a bare knuckle makes contact with a human nose, there's a very small chance that it kills them. And unfortunately for you, it did. That's also the place where you fought the Imperial Guard. Though, again, why he was there undercover has still confused you to this day. And then there's also the Broken Ring, which is where you go to relax. It's just a quiet hole in the wall when compared to the Rusty Screw. But since you're going for that guy who offered to buy you a drink, I assume you're headed there.
Yep.
Alright. You and Gore walk from the beautiful facade of the docks into its seedier parts. Beggars look towards you. One sort of pipes up and says, "Spare change!" I assume you ignore him.
Just like grunt at him and then keep moving.
Yeah, there are a dozen more after him who call for spare change as well, so it's probably wise. There's women calling from the entryways of so-called private residences, though, you know, even a blind man or a one-eyed man is good enough to tell what they actually are. One of the women comments on your broad shoulders and rugged face, but again, you ignore these distractions because at the moment you are a man on a mission. And you have one hand in your coin purse, another anticipating a fight, especially in this area of the docks. Gore hops over the slumped body of a drunk, and you place a hand opening the door to the Rusted Screw as you step inside from the rain. As your eyes adjust to the busy bar inside, you stamp your boots against the entry mat and look around. Your usual spot that you once used to sit at the bar is open, but you can also see in a booth, sort of separated from the main riffraff in the center of the bar, you see that somewhat wealthy-looking man who had waved at you earlier, a couple days ago.
I'll go walk up to him, see if he'll let me sit.
Yeah, you walk over, and the second he makes eye contact with you, he waves one of the women who is sitting in his booth out of it and waves you in. He says, "Well, if it isn't my good friend," he raises a glass, "Lars."
Right, I didn't catch your name before.
You can just call me Cayman. You know, they shut it down.
Fighting rink?
Oh, yes. Apparently someone actually a bit too important to have died in a place like this died. They're just a normal bar now. Feels a bit of a waste to me.
So, what are you in town for right now?
Still just making money, same as I was before. You see, after you left, I mean, there was no reliable dog to bet on anymore, you know. The odds were almost always in your favor, but if you win every single fight, those are still good odds. So, after that, you know, betted on a few illegitimate fights, but now, I have to admit, I am rather boring. Legal, safe investments. The returns are not nearly as exciting as they used to be, but, well, I do like these clothes.
Understand?
And he says, "Well, I'm not much of a conversationalist, but I will keep you nice and filled up with drinks all of tonight."
Thanks, I need it.
And he will sort of walk you over to the bar personally and go to the bartender and hand him over 5 gold. And whatever it doesn't cover, you can just go to the bartender. He wants you to receive the finest of services. And this is a familiar place for you. Maybe not cozy, but certainly familiar and somewhat nostalgic. You are hunched over your drink and looking down at the alcohol-stained bar. Gore is never allowed in places like these, but you learned a really long time ago Gore can fend for himself. Like, short of, like, an actual soldier, he can kill almost anything that tries to dognap him. So you just
let's go hunt rats or something.
yeah, exactly. He'll be fine. There's a young bard playing off in the corner. You sort of like position it so your back is on the bar, you're just sipping on your drink. This used to be one of your biggest pastimes, just looking at the people. The bar has this sort of hardness to her face, this like intensity as she's playing her song. There are other people in the bar. They are familiar, even if you don't know the types of individuals themselves. Like there's the seedy rogue, the day laborers, the fire moss dealer. Then, in the sort of center of the bar, you spot 4 tables, all clustered together, where great dock workers sit. They have these heavy-set postures, salt-damaged faces, and sour expressions, and one of them is staring at you. He's larger than you, which is hard. Like, that's a hard thing to do. Most people are not even close to as big as you. But he has a big set body, though, with a decent amount of fat, and he just seems to be looking you up and down, sizing you up.
So just kind of sit and keep staring in his general direction as well.
Yeah. The man stands up from the bar, and you, from his like seat around one of those like wooden bench tables, and one of the guys next to him says, you can hear him like say over the crowd a little bit, say, "No, come on, it's not worth it." But the big dock worker begins to approach you, sitting at the bar.
When he gets up close enough, I'll say, "Can I help you?"
What in the hell are you looking at, Inkskin?
Looking at everyone here.
He sort of lowers his head to like be a bit level with you since you're seated, and just pungent alcohol like rolls from his breath, and he'll just like take his finger and poke your shoulder. Not
said-
so tough now, huh?
If I can't help you, then I'll be going back to my drinking.
He pokes you on the other shoulder. Yeah, you scared?
You're getting my fists dirty.
Big words for such a small lad. Pokes you again on the chest.
He'll try to like turn around and ignore him then.
Yeah, he pokes you on the shoulder. And he says, "What? Am I too small for your notice? You some sort of fancy noble-born lad?"
He'll do like a, after hearing that, go from having his back turned to doing like a full turnaround swing to his face.
Okay, I make an attack. Alright, roll damage. Alright, you spin around and clock him in the jaw. Surprisingly, most people would instantly drop unconscious, especially like, you know, sort of average folk in their lives. But this one, he's still standing. Now, how healthy he is, you could not say, but he's not looking good. So let's roll into a quick initiative. I don't know how long this will go on for, probably not very long, but okay, we're gonna roll our D20. Alright, I don't have my question mark token, so we'll just know that he goes at 18. Alright, he goes next. As you clock him in the jaw, blood spurts from his lips, splattering across the bar. These fights seem to be so common that only a couple people nearby like scoot away, and then a couple people at tables sort of cheers. Blood splatters across the floor, and he swings back at you, his fist going sort of wide in your direction. An 8. This drunk, he's not in the right state to be doing much fighting. His fist just goes wildly wide, like almost hitting the bar behind you. And you can now go.
I gave you a chance to leave me alone.
Alright, you swing towards his face and it makes contact. As it does so, your fist just whizzes forward, striking exactly where you'd aimed for, just below the jaw. In the nose, you may kill the poor bastard with experience, and anything near the ears could have ruptured his eardrum, but at worst, he'll bite off his tongue, hitting him on the jaw. And then you watch as your fist makes contact with the jaw, one of his eyes flushes with red. A burst blood vessel. And then he staggers backwards. A couple patrons glance overward, including 3 tables worth of his buddies. The dock worker hits the ground hard. And you feel empty. Not guilty. He was, of course, being an utter asshole, seeking this fight. And most of his friends seem to also agree, as they don't go to, like, fight you. One of them just goes over and begins to drag him back to the table with a bit of blood on his face. But this was not some grand mountain that you summited. It's just a pathetic man who had no understanding of what it was he was facing. Compared to the glory of your fight against the Treant, the Hydra, the throngs of undead and blights, this was empty. The bartender walks over to you, and he places 5 gold on the counter in front of you. Well, obviously, you know, you're not in trouble in my book or anything, but we're trying to tamp down on that sort of thing. We're trying not to be that type of place anymore.
Wouldn't have fought back if you didn't instigate it.
No, I understand. Trust me, I'm not blaming you. He'll be sent out as well once he's conscious again. I'm sorry, I really am, and I'll make sure your friend gets back his coin.
Lars will finish his current drink, slam it on the counter, and then just get up to leave.
Yeah, the guy who originally brought you in here, he walks at it, he like sort of catches up to you, don't really know where he came from, but he says, "Oh, that was beautiful. God, I wish you were still fighting." Do you think you will be? I know a couple places. God, we could make a fortune together. Oh, he seems way more exhilarated than you are.
I'm considering it more and more the more I stay here.
Alright, well, if you do that, Cayman, don't forget that name. Oh, it really is a pleasure to watch you. Do you know if you're going anywhere else? Or do you want some coin for the road?
No, thank you. I'll be in town for a little bit longer.
Well, no, I spend most nights here, though. I can't say half of them were as exciting as that.
What's the name of some of the places that are still doing fights around here?
Still doing fights? Well, no bars anymore. The Red Cloaks have, sort of choked down on that. There's a bi-weekly fight held at one of the warehouses near here, bare knuckle if you like it. Frankly, so the fighting has moved out towards the eastern cities, Nausius, Tarraco, those sorts of places. Sedalia. I think I'm actually going to go to Nausius once the spring comes. I hear that there's an ogre. Not even one of those half-ogre mongrels, but an actual full ogre who fights. I'd love to see it.
Well,
You should come back once you've
Maybe
once you've finished celebrating tonight. We can discuss some business opportunities. You and me in business together. You know, the fighter and his promoter. The beef
Will
and the
me
brain.
back in here.
I'm sure they will. The bartender will forget all about it. I'll make sure he does.
Well, I'll be visiting here later, I guess.
He gives a broad smile, flashes it. It's sleazy. There's something about this man that you just don't like, just from his mannerisms. But he will go back and sit down, and you can step back out into the rain. Gore is just seated next to the door, like totally alert. His ears sort of perk up as you open the door. You know of one other bar, like in the immediate area. It'd be like a 2-minute walk to get there.
Sure, I'll just go there for now.
All right. You walk out, back onto the dock proper, and make your way towards the broken ring. You used to spend hours in there just silently contemplating, looking at the wacky characters there within. Its primary clientele is the wealthy of the docks, though the wealthy of the docks are still quite poor as far as the city is concerned. Outside the bar is a bouncer, and as you get closer, he seems to have taken one look at you and passed his judgment. His arm extends across the door, blocking your path.
What? Can't get in?
You got blood on your knuckles.
I don't expect someone to be pissing me off like at the last bar.
I'm just doing a job, man. I hope you don't. I just don't bring fight in there. If you bring a fight in there with you, I'll have to throw you out on your ass.
Fair enough. Promise you then that I won't.
Looks at you. He sighs and just lowers his arm. You can't tell whether he just doesn't think it's worth it, or he's
Or he thinks I'll fight him.
Yeah, or that, yeah. But you step through the entryway into the bar. It's a bit quieter in here. The same number of people, but they're just keeping their voices down. Your usual spot at the bar is most likely an officer from the Legion. He actually has a remarkable similarness to your brother. Not the beard, he looks different, but he has that uniform on, that same sort of demeanor about him as he's sitting at the bar. He doesn't have his dress uniform on, but he doesn't need to. He could be a good candidate for a quick scrap. Or you could just go to the bar.
I'm gonna try not to get into a fight here. Just drink. Yeah.
Okay. You walk to the bar and sit down. You go wave at the bartender. You recognize the bartender, of course, though the bartender doesn't seem to particularly recognize you. And you will order a drink. Just sit there. Relax. You keep your head face on the bar, not trying to start anything, but you hear a sort of voice from your left. Are you Lars Titus Regia?
Depends on who's asking.
You glance over and you see that young Legionnaire officer. He has just this adoration in his eyes. He looks at your face and says, "Oh, what eye? Oh my God, you are! You're a judge, an imperial judge." And you see a couple people at the bar glance over.
I kind of speak up a little bit loudly. Ex-judge.
He lowers his tone and says, "Oh, Jesus, what happened? I got a buddy down in the Southern Legions. He said that you guys saved him."
I was only serving for a certain amount of time, and that time came up.
Well, that was some good short-term service. I mean, I can't say that I have a necromancer under my belt, and I've been in there much longer than a couple months.
I'll admit it was fun. Enjoyed it.
Well, he says, I'll try to leave you to your own devices, sorry.
Not a problem.
And he sort of scoots away like 3 or 4 stools and leaves you alone. And you drink the usual swill. It burns as it goes down. You lift your gaze from it and look around the bar. In the past, this bar was filled with interesting characters you entertained yourself with observing from afar. A cheating husband, a poet struggling to develop his prose, a small group of revolutionaries plotting their new utopian society. Every night brought a new, just wacky group of people. Tonight feels different, though. You look at the first booth. An older, clearly patrician in origin, with a young woman. Scandalous, and yet it just doesn't elicit the same, interest as it once did. In another booth, there's a grizzled legionnaire. Bears the scars of battle. He doesn't have a missing eye or anything, but he has many signs of injuries on his body. His leg looks a little bit stiff. And in the past, you may have entertained yourself by concocting stories about how you gained those scars, all in your own head, But it just all feels a little bit stale. But at least it's a good place to drink. No one here is giving you weird eyes and, straight glances like that. You can actually begin to cut into the long evening, burning through a couple of hours, just going through flagon of swill through flagon of swill. Slowly, as the level of intoxication begins to increase, you remember why you like this life in the first place. There's no complicated thoughts, there's no confusing emotions, it's just alcoholism, the bliss, the hazy bliss of alcoholism.
Is there a bard playing here as well?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just sort of quiet, but you feel that urge for something new, for entertainment. The same thing that drove you to the Dock District in the first place is now sort of driving you from the Broken Ring, because there is the ultimate fallback. When the Broken Ring, the Rusted Screw kind of entertain you and there's no fights, there's always drugs. Not the type that'll destroy your brain permanently. You're far smarter than to do like large amounts of Hellflake, but just a little bit here and then. Some Fire Moss, Mother's Tear, Canop. If you mix that all up, you got a cocktail for an incredibly good night. And in this particular area, one by the name of weasel-faced guy by the name of Viego. He has a slight lisp, and he was your go-to contact. Though, you can also look at dive bars, or you can always just cut while you're ahead and go back to the boredom of the hotel.
Yeah, I think I'll just head back to the hotel.
Okay. You exit the bar. Gore's out there. His muzzle is a bit bloody. He will just follow you as you exit back out into the streets of the Dock District. It's, well, how are you feeling about all this?
Disappointed. I just expected it. He didn't expect his father to just accept him coming back, but he's hoping that he could do more with his family besides just only talking to his sister twice, and that's it.
Yeah, it would have been one thing to be like, yelled at or anything like that, but just totally stonewalled. That's pretty tough because there's nothing you can really do about that. It's not like you can argue. It's just over. There's just nothing to be done. Okay, so with your head sort of hung a bit low, you begin to walk from the Dock District. You are very drunk. You're actually very good at like covering up for other people because you've just done it so much, but you are deeply intoxicated. And your legs are just sort of carrying you where they will. You're trying to go back to the place, but through the brief moments of like mental lucidity that you get, you can tell that you're not quite stable, and as you feel your butt hit the ground, you are in an alleyway. You look around. Gore has cleared out the rats, and if there ever was a homeless person in here, there isn't anymore. Again, Gore has a bit of a chilling presence to those sorts of things. He's just curled up on the edge of the alleyway beside you. And you're sort of just... There's this loneliness to the Dock District that you don't remember feeling before. You're just one person in a crowd of untold, hundreds or thousands throughout the Dock District. No one looks at you as your special. You don't have a judge's badge, and even if you don't particularly like that feeling, you also don't like the opposite, where no one recognizes you and no one, even acknowledges that you're there. But sitting in this alleyway, you're through your sort of beer goggles, you look out towards the Galantine Sea to the north, or the Galantian Sea to the north. You can see distant storm clouds bringing in further sheets of rain for the city, and your eyes grow very, very heavy. And just as you sort of drift off, your head jerks you back awake, but you're not in the same spot. You feel hay underneath you, the sound of crickets, and a distant owl. You look to your left and your right. You're in a stable. Your family's stable. The estate that they have back in Regia. You hear a soft voice speaking in Cymbeline from your left. Lars, if you don't want to marry her, we should flee. You glance over and you see a young half-elf boy. He's no older than 15. His facial features are soft, but his body is taut with muscle. You recognize him. You can never forget that face. Kaladin, your best friend, the one who taught you Cymbeline. I mean, we should try to flee. I would join you if you let me. Slowly, you begin to remember where you are. Earlier today, your father told you that you're to be wedded from some woman from Tabrash that you've never met. You've never even heard of her. You've done everything your father had asked you for the last 15 years. Been a good lad, studied hard with tutors, worked hard on your swordsmanship, and this is how he's repaid you. Perhaps it's just...
Do I recognize this as a flashback?
It feels more like a memory. Yeah, I guess that is the same as a flashback. So yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you can recognize that this is a sort of waking memory. It's just, it's just not right. I mean, you did everything he asked you to, you studied hard, you worked, and you're the best swordsman I know. I just think, fleeing would be good. It would allow you to reset your life. Maybe we could even go and join the Legion. We're about the right age. You have the skills.
Lars will just kind of sitting, staring off.
Yeah,
thinking about
Kaladin
the
looks
words.
at you. He says, fine. I really think we should discuss this, though. I mean, we could meet up at the stables in the early hours of the morning, get some saddles, and ride to Regia. No one could stop us. It's only about an hour ride. Save you from that marriage. As Kaladin speaks, you begin to smile. He came to your father's estate when you were 8. He was 9. You never really asked him about his past, though you'd heard bits of it from servants and from your father. His family had been fleeing the distant island of Galadrim, and from what very little Kaladin has told you, it was a hellish place that sounded as if it were from mythology. Your father, in a very rare act of generosity, hired Kaladin as your personal servant. You've done everything. He is as competent with swords as you, he is as skilled in the art of persuasion, as competent with poetry, and maybe even more so in history. He is the closest you've ever been to someone. I mean, Lars, you gotta at least say something. I mean, you're not happy with this arrangement.
You can't just go up and leave, though.
I know you say that, but, I mean, people do it all the time. Just because you're a part of some fancy noble family doesn't mean that you shouldn't get to pursue your happiness, and I'm sure your father would be more than happy once we return as war heroes. I hear that, Agrippa tells me from, your uncle that fighting is beginning to heat up on the plains. They'll need good warriors, skilled with swords.
I'm sure they'll have plenty of them that aren't us.
Lars. All right, at least think about it this way. Here, you stay. You get married to this woman you've never met. You find yourself on a track that you have no control over. Perhaps in 10 years, 20 years, you find yourselves a consul, a proconsul. And you have no idea why you're there. You never took a moment of agency in your life. I took agency, and that's why I'm here. And it feels, well, I guess I just feel horrible if you found yourselves in a situation that you had no agency in putting yourself in.
You can't just leave Agrippa and Vespania, though. Vespania.
I'm sure she'd understand. They want you to be happy. I'll admit, I wasn't raised, my whole life here. But I've been here long enough to know that most people don't have to get forced into marrying someone they don't know. Most people get to choose. All the servants chose their spouses.
different.
You don't need to decide tonight, but I just think it's useful to talk through the plan, just in case we do. Just in case you do.
I can't. I don't think I'll ever be able to return if I do.
Maybe. And you know him well enough that is not the end of it. He'll probably continue to pester you for quite a while. But the two of you sit there in quiet for a bit. He begins to joke and laugh about lessons that you've had, swordsmanship, and then you hear a rustle from nearby. Paladin's head darts up, one of the horses whinnies, and he looks around the stable. I'll go check outside. It's probably just a badger. Kaladin sort of crouches and begins to exit the stable. It's late at night. Not quite time that you have to be in bed, but it's getting close to there. And then as Kaladin approaches the sort of edge of the stable, he looks back and says, "Look inside the stable. See what made the noise."
Get up and look.
Yeah. Well, what are you thinking? Are you gonna just look from afar and or are you gonna start getting hands on, trying to move stuff out of the way?
Sorry, plot out the scenario again. So I'm not in the stables?
You're in the stable. Paladin is near the entrance, exiting it to go check the exterior of the stable for where the sound came from. His guess is that it's some small animal, but he'd like to see what it is. You are inside the stable, and he wants you to see if the sound came from in there. Just
around stuff and look.
Okay, then make an investigation check. You can just use your current sheet. All right, you begin to search the stables, moving aside objects, and then you hear a sort of sniffle. It's the best way that you can describe it. And you go over towards a stack of saddles. There's 4 or 5 saddles stacked up on one another, making a pile about as tall as you are. You move aside the top saddle, and hidden in the little cubby behind all those saddles, you see Vespania. She's young, about 8. She's looking up at you. She looks very surprised as you sort of move aside the saddle and sort of yelps a little bit. She says, "Oh, Lars?
You in here, Vespania? It's late."
I was playing hide and seek with Agrippa, and then I heard you and Kaladin coming in. I didn't know what to do. You're not leaving, are you?"
No, I'm not.
Okay. And you sort of can reach down and pick her up. Kaladin comes in, and Vespania is not quite crying, but she seems she's cold. She's probably been in there for quite some time. She is quite good at hide and seek. And Kaladin walks over and sort of tussles her hair and says, No, we're not leaving quite yet. You feel cold, and slowly this memory passes beside. You're in the alleyway again, groggy. You're quite sober yet, but you're getting there. The moon is high in the sky, and the sounds of nearby bars have begun to die down. Gore is curled up next to you, sleeping. Your throat is parched. A drink would do you good. A lot of drinks, or maybe some sleep. But that memory, you haven't thought about it in a really long time. In fact, you don't remember much about the later years of your childhood. You try not to. So, will be more drinks, some sleep.
And I'll just get some water back at the hotel and try to sleep.
Okay. You drag yourself to your feet. It's a Herculean effort. Gore sort of raises his head and then follows you. You're not quite drunk enough that you're just going to fall on your ass, so you manage to stagger out of the dock district, and once you get past there, as you steadily sober up, your walking gets more and more straight. It's very, very late as you arrive back at the hotel. Your horse is still in the stables, and there's not a luggage of a trunk of shit on the front lawn, so it seems as if even though you haven't paid for the night, they're still willing to put you up. And as you stagger in, you probably reek of alcohol because you can see the nose of the attendant sort of wrinkle a little bit. He says, "Lord?"
He'll put down 2 more gold pieces on the counter.
What? And you walk past him, climbing the stairs. You walk past another sort of cleaning servant of the hotel, and again, she just sort of recoils a little bit. You can't smell yourself because you've been too indoctrinated in the smell of the dock district to really get it, but it can't be good. You go inside of your room. There's a pitcher of water with little lemon pieces in it, and you can pour that out and begin to chug it down until your parched throat is once again sated. Are you just going to sleep, hoping you feel better in the morning?
Yeah, I'll probably visit in the bathhouse again in the morning.
Yeah.
Or the place here. They said they had one.
Yeah, they do. You go to bed. Your eyelids grow heavy. Sleepiness. Your eyes close. And once again, you seemingly jerk awake. You're looking out a window. The window of your family bedroom back at the window of your bedroom back at your family's estate. It's early in the morning, no later than 3 a.m. You're wired with energy. Your heart flutters with anticipation and your limbs are flooded with adrenaline. Kaladin is standing in the doorway as you sort of glance over your shoulder. Hurry up, Lars. We need to get to the horses if we're going to get out in time. It slowly comes back to you. You don't know how he did it, but he managed to convince you. It took weeks, slowly whittling away, but he convinced you it was all true, that you didn't want to marry this woman, that it was all wrong, and the legions would be a good path for you. Fighting on the front lines, the glory of it all.
He'll probably look back and stare for a bit and then run over to Kaladin to the stables.
Yeah, you sort of dip down next to the door and swing your backpack over your shoulders, and you guys reach the top of the staircase. Kaladin says, all right, so one more time. Go down the stairs, take a left exit through the back door. Then we sneak to the stables, put on the saddles. We should be home free. I checked last night, the servants' roster. There will be one man in the kitchen. Domitus, he's preparing the servants' breakfast. And then there's a single yeoman patrolling near the stable, though he should be out near the orchard about now. I made sure he was a little bit drunk last night. So he should be fine. We just gotta stay quiet.
Lars just nods.
And roll me a stealth check. You and Kaladin begin to descend the steps slowly. Your backpack is jangly, and as you get like halfway down the steps, Kaladin just holds out a hand to make you pause.
Just pause and wait.
Two of you guys sit on the stairs for a second. He says, all right, I think we can go. And the two of you guys go fully down the steps. Kaladin peers around the corner and then waves you on towards the back door.
I'll just continue to follow.
You walk past the entryway that Kaladin pressed himself up to, and sure enough, you can see the back of a large man slowly preparing the breakfast, peeling tubers, washing vegetables, and things like that. And he exits the back door with you. You're outside, you hear the crickets and sounds of nighttime, and sort of looping your way around the house. There's one window where sort of light shines through. Kaladin looks at that window with a little bit of a raised eyebrow and says, all right, I'm going to keep an eye out for the yeoman. See who's awake at this hour.
I'll go try to check and see.
Yeah, you creep up to the edge of the window and take a glance inside. You can see a candle burning. This is Vespania's bedroom. She's like fully covered by her covers. You don't see her face, but her candle burns, and next to it is a little like storybook.
I'll try to sneak in and read the book.
Yeah, you can poke your head into the room and walk over. Kaladin is sort of quietly crouched in the doorway. You flip open the book. It's one of the storybooks that was read to you when you were a boy. It's about Pelennor Elfsbane. Of course, it's made for children, so it doesn't talk about his mass genocide of every elf he could get his hands on, but instead it talks about him being a brave hero that slew dragons and basilisks and other horrible beasts.
We'll just close it and go to put the candle out and then leave.
Yeah, snuff the candle and exit the room quietly. You and Kaladin make your way from the house to the stable. Wherever the yeoman is, he's not here. And approaching sort of the edge of the stable, you are now leading the way. You peek inside. Everything is as you left it the night before. Dustin, your horse is here. Kaladin's horse seems fine as well. You let your feet guide you forward into the stable. You approach Dustin's stall and click at him. He's an old horse and wise. He looks at you with deep brown eyes. However, something's odd. Out of the corner of your eye, you notice Kaladin isn't at his horse stall. You turn around to look back from where you came from. Your heart pounds. There's a man in the shadows, in a cloak. He holds a dagger to Kaladin's throat. You don't know how you didn't hear him or see him on your approach, but your eyes are locked onto Kaladin's. Kaladin isn't resisting. His eyes only looking at you in horror. What
Got
do
a
you do?
weapon on me?
You have a sword at your side, yeah, that you're going to bring with you to the legions.
I'll draw it and say, "Who are you?"
The man in the cloak keeps a dagger to Kaladin's throat, and you see him look at something behind you. Make a dexterity saving throw. All right. You feel something hard hit you in the side of the head. Even, young Lars has his world fucking rocked as some great big object makes contact with the side of his head. It feels like, a mallet just struck him there. And you feel two big hands wrap around you. You glance over your shoulder and you see your father's bodyguard, a man that you've seen many times, though you've never really been acquainted with. He has 150 pounds on you and at least a decade of life, and his arms are like a vice grip around you. The cloaked assassin shouts out, "Lord, they've been detained." A side door to the stable opens, and you hold back tears of pain as the bodyguard grips tighten. You see your father, a disapproving scowl on his face. A younger man. Your brother, only 11, follows behind him. Agrippa looks confused, still rubbing the tiredness out of his eyes, not really grasping what he's looking at. Then you see your sister, Vespania. She's almost entirely huddled behind your father, peeking out from his pants. She looks guilty. Your father walks fully in, his boots clicking as he crosses across the hard-packed dirt of the stable. "Good-for-nothing knife here. You let this vile creature corrupt you." He's mostly looking at you, though he's has his hands gesturing towards Kaladin. He's whispered in your ears, turning you against your family, your responsibilities. "My greatest mistake in raising you has been going so easy on you. For every inch I attempt to give, you seized a mile. Consider this a final straw. A mistake like this, from an heir to our family, and an ambitious one, that be forgiven. But a mistake like this, premeditated and organized by the vile whispers of a foreigner, cannot." Your father looks away from you. The bodyguard covers your mouth. You know what's saying. You remember how this memory ends. You try to close your eyes, but you can't. It's only a memory. You see flashes. The flashes are enough. Screaming, broken teeth, clippers for the points of the ears. Then finally, after far too long, as your sister and brother watch on in horror and screaming and crying, a merciful death. You screamed once the bodyguard took his hand off your mouth. Your voice was hoarse. You couldn't speak for a week. Not that you would have anyways. Then you feel a hand on your shoulder. This is no longer a dream. How do you react?
Say again, sorry?
You feel a hand on your shoulder, separate of the dream.
He'll just go out to reach the hand like reflex as if someone's trying to attack him.
Yeah, you
Grab it.
You sort of grab out, and you wake up, and as you hear a yelp, it seems to be a servant. You can see light flooding into the window of your hotel room. It's pretty late in the day for the sun to be that high. The woman who was probably just seeing if you were alive sort of recoils a bit in surprise as you grab her arm and says, "I'm sorry, Lord, I'm sorry."
Oh, sorry, I didn't expect someone to be in here.
You were screaming.
I was?
Yes. You all right?
Sorry, I apologize. Didn't mean to disturb you.
Okay. She quickly jogs out of the room. You can see Gore is sitting on the side. He was fully alert as she had entered, but he's held back his growl. He licks your hand and sort of pops 3/4 of the way up onto the bed. You're sober now. That memory that you'd sort of long pushed to the side comes back freely. Or the emptiness of Kaladin being gone. You'd had no one to speak to about it. You lost weight. When you told your wife had arrived, you don't remember feeling anything. The ceremony was a quick affair. You remember feeling like you weren't in your own body, but watching through the eyes of someone else. Then there was a day you were cleaning your room. Your new wife had demanded it, as she demanded a dozen other things from you, which you'd all done without a thought. As you moved through old books and childhood toys, you'd found a small booklet hidden in a cubby in the wall. It was a journal by Kaladin. It wasn't a day-by-day journal, but it contained his curiosities, quotes he found of interest, and short stories. He sat in your bed, reading for hours. Undisturbed, you felt like that shell you'd contained yourself within crack. Not fully, but enough to let tears flow freely for him. The final entry was dated the same morning you'd fled home, or at least attempted to. Why Kaladin didn't take the journal with him, he couldn't say. But the entry read, "Make the most of our lives. Our purpose can be found in trying to help others." You're alone in your hotel room, other than Gore. You probably have a couple more days until your father reaches out towards you again to make whatever final arrangements. How do you spend them?
He doesn't want to repeat of last night, so he's probably just gonna mainly hang around the hotel and do what's little stuff that they have to do there. But if not, then probably just go around the city and see what there is to do in the meantime, just to burn time.
Yeah, you can keep yourself entertained for several days. The gymnasium is not so bad. You can at least work out a decent amount. Beyond that, you occasionally can go to the more higher class bars and listen to performers and talk to occasionally interested people, but mostly just listen to them. And after a week, since the first day, as you wake up early in the morning from your hotel, there's a slip that's been placed under your door by the hotel staff. They say that a carriage is waiting for you outside of the hotel.
I'll get all dressed up in my fine clothes, shave, and wash my face, that kind of stuff, and then get ready to go.
All right. You head outside to the cart. The carriage driver is the same one from before. He gives you a smile and a nod as you climb inside. The cart begins to rattle back in the direction of the estate for quite a bit. Eventually, you see the familiar townhouse, the master servant on the steps, and once you have been gotten out of the carriage, the master servant will give you a bow. "The Lord Master of the household will see you now."
Lars will just nod and follow.
You'll be led through the winding corridors of the house into what has been turned into an office. Fireplace roars on the far side of the room. Your father is seated behind a desk piled with the many duties of a governor of an entire region of the empire. There's no one else in this room after the master servant closes the door behind you. Your father keeps most of his focus on the papers on his desk, but his hand gestures towards a seat across from him.
We'll just go to sit.
I've thought about what you said.
He's just gonna silently listen, knowing that it's probably best not to interject.
There is no possible world in which you integrate back into this family. For 16 years, you brought utter shame on all of us. With your actions, with your inaction, with your refusals to, at the bare minimum, contact us. But your performances in the South are undeniable. So, I think I've thought of an amicable arrangement that could work for both of us. You will serve as a judge, or in the military. Whichever one you do, I don't care. Your physical talents must be utilized. You will do your absolute best to bring glory to this family, rather than the shame you brought upon it for however long that you've walked this earth. Then, perhaps one day, you can become a full member of this family again. You will, of course, attend your sister's wedding, and if your brother finally gets married, then you'll attend his as well. You will attend blessings of the children when they are born, and maybe you will find a wife yourself. In every official capacity, you will remain a member of this family, but you will not be permitted on our estates. You will not inherit any titles when I die, unless you serve this family faithfully and make up for your years of transgressions.
Just nods.
He looks up at you from his paperwork.
He looked like he's expecting maybe say something.
He seems, again, he just seems confused. You have you have totally subverted his mental image of how this conversation was going to go, yet again. And he just sort of stares at you. What happened out there in the Deadwood?
The Deadwood definitely had something to do with it. When you are in a place where death can take you at any moment, but the real moment was in a battle with my cousin when I had already accepted death that I would die there fighting the enemy, and he came back, fought with me until the end, risking his own life. Made me realize that maybe I shouldn't treat family so lightly.
Nods. He extends a hand across the deck to shake.
He'll accept it and shake it and say, I know I won't be able to immediately make up for the many things I've done wrong, but I'm hoping this is a start.
I'll contact those who I can in the Department of Faith. You'll be reinstated as a judge rather quickly. Since you can't stay on the family's estates, I'll make sure you get a small one out inside the city.
Thank you.
He just seems a little bit confused and just waves you out. And the rest of it, what you do with the rest of your rest, which will probably be about 5 weeks, we will resolve that during our next main session. It was a quick one,
Okay.
but I think we've learned a lot about Lars. Okay, well, any final thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think I'll
Okay.
continue playing Lars for now.
All right.
Because as much as I like the idea of the new character I had in mind, I don't think it's a good thing to save for later.
All right, and Lars has pretty powerful motivation.
Yeah.
All right, well, then, I will see you whenever we play next. Hasta luego.
Goodbye.